So look, without further ado, I'd like to kick us off, and I'm delighted to welcome Minister Michael Healy to open this session for us. I should say, Michael, sorry, in introduction, Michael, of course, I think is known to all, but he's independent. We still call you independent? Is he still independent politician? Okay, physician. And businessman, and he's served as on Tacht Dála TD since 2011, first for Kerry South, now of course for the Kerry constituency, and indeed was promoted to Minister of State in the Department of Agriculture, Food and Fisheries in the current government. So congratulations about that, Michael, and welcome to the lecture.
Thank you very much, Leonard. And first of all, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I want to pay a very special recognition to Minister of Parliament, Chair of Government and the National Caucus, and Chair of the Canada-Ireland Parliamentary Group, Mr. James Maloney, and also to John Cancannon, the Irish Ambassador to Canada, to Mr. Dennis O'Brien, a man who I admire greatly, and other speakers such as Mick Clifford, who I have followed greatly. Sometimes we might have a little disagreement, but that's the wonderful thing about what I would call proper communications. If you have people who are in communications, and if they have to speak facts and tell the truth, and it's like I joke about having an argument or a disagreement with Mick Clifford, but you see, the one thing that I know in my heart and soul, and I'm sorry now for focusing on Mick Clifford, but when I pick up the paper and when I read his article, okay, it's his opinion, but when he says something, it is inherently true, it is honest, and if there's an error, it's a genuine mistake, and you can see a little correction a couple of days later. But like, he will not set out of a day to write an article and to malign somebody, or to abuse them, or to tell anything that's untrue. He might have a differing political or vision of what any person is saying at any time. But that is where we are in Ireland now at the moment. And it's the work of negativity, and we have an awful lot of it at the moment, and we have so much of it, like. And I'll give you an example then of other things that mean so much to me when it comes to telling the truth and telling facts. We're talking about the way Ireland has evolved, and if you look at what happened here, everybody knows the history. The fact that the transatlantic cable was laid, and I have to remember a great old friend of mine, God be good to me, he's above in heaven today, and that's Josie Keating. And the reason I remember Josie, he was like myself, he gave his life at machinery, and he had the foresight, he bought the cable and, did great things, and he was a great employer down here. And to be neglectful today, not to mention his name, in front of all these guests, and to remember him fondly for the employment that he created here. I remember times when he had 50 and 60 men working, and there was hardly 5 jobs going in South Kerry, but he had 50 or 60 men, So we have to remember people like that. But in the way we've evolved, I think Kerry Radio is 35 years in existence. And again, the same as Mick Clifford, I've often had good debates on Radio Kerry, and we could call them arguments and this and that and the other thing. But what is said on the radio, bar an error or bar a mistake, is truthful. And it's proper representation. I've seen people above in the Dáil misusing Dáil privilege. And what I would call misusing it is maligning somebody who's not there to defend themselves. And I hope he won't kill me for mentioning this, but a man that I already said I have great time for, and that is Dennis O'Brien. And I've said on the record of the Dáil that I have a problem with Dennis O'Brien, something that I don't like about him. And I'll tell you what it is. I would love if there was one of him in every parish in this country. And that's the comment I would make about him. In other words, when you admire somebody, you'd like to see more like him around the place. But I know politicians, for example, that purposely would, under Dáil privilege, would go trying to undermine a person of such greatness and trying to, knock them. And why would they try to do it? Number one, because they're successful, and we have people in Ireland in the morning who hate successful people. They don't like them. And they have a chip on their shoulder about them. I always have this mentality that the best thing that can happen to you if you can't win the lotto, if your next door neighbour can win it, that's as good as you win it, because once you're friends with them, they'll give you work, they'll be doing something. They would be looking for a freebie, but they'd lift the area. Rising tide lifts all boats, and positivity lifts everybody. But we've politicians above in Dublin at the moment, and they're so negative. When they'd be walking around, they'd nearly be going around with their head dragging the ground like this, and they don't know which shoulder has the bigger chip in it, and they think it's a populist thing, to be moaning and groaning all the time. And I am not for 1 second, and everybody knows that I'm not. I'm not trying to make little of the issues and the problems that we have, both socially, internationally, all of the problems. We all know the problems we have. But you can look at a glass and say, is it half full or is it half empty? And my goodness, some of the people that are in politics, they think there's a hole in the bottom of the glass, and they don't think we can ever be filled. But I just started saying something there about Radio Kerry, and it's 35 years, and it should be mentioned because of communications and because of the history of this great island, the service that they have provided. I mean, I know people, and it's nice for you to hear this sort of thing, but I know people that they literally live every day, especially older people now, by Radio Kerry. And what I mean by that is they want to hear locally, first of all, the bit of gossip in the morning with Jerry O'Sullivan or whoever's filling in for him. That's 9 to 11. That's very important. Current affairs, the different issues that have happened overnight. It can be world, national, international, or local. It could be something that happened in Kinmare. And it'll be on Radio Kerry. The deaths. It's like at one time, the only bit of gossip that was going around was the postman coming before the advent of mobile phones. So a local radio station, be it ours or be it around the country, they fulfill a massive, massive, important role in people's lives. And I know from before being a national politician, being a local politician, and remember, this is where I started. I came over here looking for votes, when, to be honest with you, not one person here would have known me or nearly my father, because we were considered to be very far away. And I started combing and cultivating and working this area when I got elected to the council. Whatever vote I got in 99, I doubled it in 2004, and I doubled that again after that. And that doesn't happen out of the blue. That happens because of work. But it comes from knowing people. And I built up a relationship with people, not just here in Valentia Island, but throughout all of South Kerry and all over Kerry then eventually. And it's all about people. And when we're talking about media, and when we're talking about, the way you have to think ahead and look at things, it's all about people. But it's all about being factual. One way we're falling down an awful lot now is because of this. This was a very, very positive thing. Until people with nothing else to do got their hands in it. The mobile phone, it is probably one of the greatest advents that we've had. And the fact that you can go around now with a computer in your pocket. But the only problem with it is to be a spokesperson for people, or to be a radio presenter, or to be a Mick Clifford working in a newspaper, you have to get into that position. But now, to become a prophet of doom or gloom or news, all you have to do is own a mobile phone. And if I say something on my mobile phone and I say, well, I think such a thing and I think such a person, and then I'm hiding behind, nobody knows my name, they don't know my address, they don't know where I am, there might be a funny picture of a fish on it, and that's supposed to be me. And here I am then saying something. And the worst of it all, it can be something horrible, it can be something nasty, it can be something personal. And then somebody else looks at that, they repeat it, and it goes on and on and on, and it snowballs. And if we are going to do anything with communications in the future, we've come a great way, we've come a great journey. If you go back in your history and if you think about when people left here, we'll just say, for instance, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, and they went over to London, you could imagine how small and how cold and how weak you'd feel leaving here. Things were bad, no money, no employment, no prospects, very poor housing. You didn't have a bridge to cross. You got into a small boat and you rowed across there, and you had to make your way then to get safe passage over to England. It was a very long journey, but it was a lonesome journey. And you had to go over there and you had to work. And you had to work. You had to roll up your sleeves. If you were a lady that time, you went into some service of some type. And if you were a man, you went working, tunneling, you went digging. There was no such thing as a mini digger or a micro digger. You were the micro digger, you were the mini digger with your back. And the one thing about it is Irish people, whether they were from Kerry or Connemara or Donegal, the Donegal people went to Scotland predominantly, and you worked. And you were used for work. And some of the great things, the great infrastructure that we have, not just in England, but throughout the world, and especially, of course, in America, it was the sweat of Irish people. But those people went away and made their own way in the world. But we have people now who are making a career out of negativity and out of being horrible, and about saying dirty, nasty things about people they never met. They don't really know them. If they met them for 5 minutes, they could have a completely different attitude. But if you want to ask me about the challenges for the next 40 years, or between here and 2040, I would say, and I would ask the question of people who, like Dennis O'Brien, who has done great things for communications. I would ask the question, how are we going to get people back to telling the truth? And I am not in any way in the world trying to undermine the right of people to question, for example, politicians. No such thing. If I say something tomorrow, I know I have no monopoly on being right. I'd be the first person inside in a room if somebody said, well, what mistakes have you made in your political life? The question I'd say is, how much time have you got? Because I could start listing them. I could start listing mistakes I've made, both locally and nationally. Different things. No problem in the world. And I wouldn't deny them at all, because I have no grand idea about what my station is, and I'll be my own best critic. So what I'm saying is, when I or any politician, when we're doing something, of course we're open to criticism. But factual criticism. Take us on the basis of facts, our policies, what drives us, what our vision is locally, whether it's county development plans, whether it's the greater scheme of things, whether it's to do with health policy, education, all the different ranges throughout government. Take us on those, but don't go take us on saying, personal things about our personal lives, or about what we do or about what we don't do. And I can tell you this, because the funny thing about it is, it's a matter of fact. I always said before that the Healy Rays were accused of everything in the world except murder. And the funny thing about it is, and I can tell you this factually here today, I'm not able to say that anymore, because we actually have been accused of being involved in murders. And that's the world we are living in now today. And that's fairly serious. And I and everybody else, I have children, I have grandchildren. And this isn't about me, because when I'm talking about me, I'm talking about everybody else. And I'm talking about you. And I'm talking about your children and your grandchildren. And the likes of me or Dennis O'Brien, people like us, we can take it. We mightn't like it. We can take the hits and we can roll with it. But I wouldn't be worried about so much us. But I'd be very, very worried about young children. I'd be worried about the 6-year-old grandchild of today. And that from the minute that they are, a couple of more years, they'll be handed a mobile phone. And they then will be exposed to this world that is out there. A very dark world, a very dangerous place. And where, because of their skin color, because of their ears might be out more than in, and all these little small things that happen with children. They might be short, they might be tall, different things. Like we were all different when we were small, and that they'll be picked on or bullied, and when they'll grow into their teenage years, their relationships, what they'll be doing, it'll be always micro-managed and micro-looked at under the guise of a mobile phone. And tweets and texts and Snapchats and all this. There's a horrible existence of a core of people out there. And I would say to people that are a lot smarter than me, who are involved in communications, who are involved in radio stations, who are editors of papers, what are we going to do about that? And that is really, really something that we have to tackle. But we have to tackle it together. And we have to be really strong about this. I've spoken in the Dáil, and I'm delighted that there are other deputies here today that will attest to this. And there are sound people, because when I look at politics, I think we should be working more together. Of course, we'll have the competition of fighting for votes. It's the same as business. You fight for business. If you have a shop, you want your shop to be better than the other person's shop. If you're at diggers, you want to be bigger and better at the diggers than the other person. But at the end of the day, we can't carry anything with us. I've never seen anybody, with a hitch on the back of a hearse. But it's what we do. It's what we do when we're alive is very, very important. And I had the great privilege of having a very close friend, the late Michael O'Connor. He lived to be 108, and his head was a lot better than mine when he was 108. He had his perfect health, sound, solid man. He was a ship's radio operator, and he came from Glencar. And I used to ring him from the Dáil, and he used to be funny. When I'd ring him, he'd say, "Oh, Michael, my call from the Dáil." And he was a lovely man, a very well-spoken man. But I used to ask him questions about things like this and about, where we were going as a society, because I place awful value on older people. Again, people that would be smarter than me, they've seen more, they might have a way better outlook on life. But I asked him the question over and over again, what should we be doing? And what he used to always say was, if you stick with the facts, and if people use their time on this earth to work and do something productive, and when I say something productive, I don't mean not everybody maybe is able to physically work. Maybe not everybody, because of one reason or the other, they mightn't be able to perform certain roles. But there is something for everybody to do. And every day a person, the first thing anybody that doesn't get up early in the morning anyway, they're at a major disadvantage in this life, right? But if people are getting up early in the morning and using their time for any purpose, if it was only to climb a mountain and look around you, use your time, because time is so finite. The most any one of us can really do is 0 to 100. And that's about as good. We're not all going to be like Michael O'Connor getting to 108, unfortunately. But if we use the time properly and to help people, and it might only be the simplest thing in the world. It might only be by smiling at people, greeting them, remembering something nice that they did sometime and saying, "I'll never forget you for what you did for me." And, simple gestures make an awful difference. And when we die, then the nicest thing that anybody could say about you is, "Well, you were a good neighbour, you were a sound person, I could always turn to him or her, and they helped me the time that such a thing happened." And isn't that a very nice way to be in life? But there are people, and I'll call them out today for what they are. There's horribleness flowing through their veins. There's poison instead of blood inside their bodies. And their heart is continuously pumping around poison. And the reason they are is because all they want to do is give out about everybody else and say things that are totally untrue. So the message that I would be giving today is, when it comes to media, we must respect. We can fight with them all we like, but we must respect what I would call the cornerstone medias. In other words, the television, the radio, the printed media, the respectable journalists that, again, I have no love relationship with reporters, because I often got a good belt in the back of the head from them, metaphorically. But maybe I deserved it. And that's fine. No problem. Once they're telling the truth. And once the person can fight back. But how do you fight people that you don't even know who they are? And of course, the one thing that you must always remember, and my grandmother was a sound, solid woman. She was cut turf, barefoot. And she worked very hard. She had 2 hands that were the size of a derby shovel. And she used to always say, and she had a habit of when she'd be standing, you know, and as she got older, she used to be stooped, but when she used to be standing, she was always sort of ready for action, and she'd have her 2 hands back like this, and she would say, Michael, if somebody goes down into the gutter, don't you go down after them. And you know, it was a fair enough outlook on life. If somebody is attack you, and if they are going into the gutter, stand back, put up your head, and smile and say, well, I'm going to hold my head up, and I'm going to do what I do best, and that is work and make a meaningful and positive contribution to life. So I don't want to go on too long. You know, nobody told me how long we were supposed to talk for. So I hope I haven't gone on for too long. But I just want to finish about saying one thing about South Kerry. And of course I have to tell you, you know, sometimes the true things that happen, and I don't want to be political now about anything like this, but I just want to remember, again, it's a fact, so I can say it. In 1966, when the late John O'Leary, God be good to him, a very nice man, he was a TD for 30 years, he was having his first by-election. My father was his director of elections. So they came down here to Valentia Island anyway, and all the people in Valentia Island wanted was a bridge. So the late Neil Blaney, another great man, he was the director of elections sent down from Dublin. My father would have been the local man. So the great Neil Blaney, anyway, he said to the people of Valentia Island, vote for John Leary and I'll give you a bridge. And in fairness, every man, woman, cat and dog voted for John Leary. And all of South Kerry were enamoured with this idea that if we'll vote for John Leary, we'll get our bridge. So sure enough, John O'Leary got elected. The people were delighted. They had their man in. So all they were waiting for was their bridge. Neil Blaney, true to his word, he came along and he made sure they were being delivered their bridge, and they got their bridge. But when it came to the opening of the bridge, a small problem had occurred. That government were gone, and a new government were in place. So a new deputy, a new minister was sent down to open the bridge and to cut the tape. But there was only one problem. That wasn't the minister that had delivered the bridge. So I'll be polite about this. A very small crowd turned up. A very, very small crowd. But shortly afterwards, the great Neil Blaney was sent down with Jackie Ray and with John O'Leary and all these other people, because they were the people that had delivered the bridge. And there was a second opening. And every man and woman from Waterville, Carrasai, Wien, Imlock, Moore, Ballinskilligs, the Glyn, Portmagee, all the ways out as far as Mountain Stage. There was no one left at home that day because they all came to the opening of the bridge. So at the end of the day, all politics is local, but there's great history attached to this island. And if we did one other thing today too, I think, which is very nice, because I always like remembering the people that came before us. When people complain about the world we have today, and when they complain about hospital services, when they complain about the lack of housing, and I'm not saying we don't have problems, we absolutely do. But just think in your heads back to where we came from. Think about what was on this island 100 years ago. Think about what was over in Portmagee 100 years ago. Compare the services we have. Compare the housing, the health, the transportation, everything we have. The way we live. It's not that long ago when I started in politics and I was in the old Southern Health Board. And if a lady was diagnosed with breast cancer, it was the exact same as a life sentence. And that's in my political lifetime. And thankfully now, bar something awfully happening with the diagnosis of breast cancer caught in time, it is very, very far from a life sentence. You will survive, you will get better, and you will hopefully have a long and fruitful life after it. So we have come an awful way. And we haven't, it's like the old story, we have a lot done, we have a lot more to do. But we really do, because what we have to do now is we have to get underneath the hood and we have to fine-tune the carburetor to make sure that we're all heading in the right direction. and to make sure that we don't flip it up. And how we'll flip it up is by not calling out rubbish for being rubbish. And in other words, calling a spade a spade. And at a time when the country is at full employment, we have to ask the following questions. People with disabilities, people that are getting older, do everything in the world for them. Focus your resources on those people. But if we have young people that are able to work, that are healthy, both mentally and physically, we should all be working. And that is a fact. We have politicians above and side the Dáil, and they continuously try to give us the attitude that everything should be available, you shouldn't have to pay for anything, and the other thing you don't have to do at all is work. Because somebody else should work. Somebody else should pay for it. And any person that is successful is a horrible person, and they can't do anything right. But that's in their opinion. And what we have to do is try and marginalize that type of an attitude, because that type of an attitude is rubbish. It's good for nothing. You know, if they really were honest with themselves, it's not good for themselves either. I think I might have gone on too long. I hope I haven't been boring. I'll tell you a funny story then too. I had a mighty speech written out. And there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages, and I haven't said one word of that. Because I thought I'd start to talk off the cuff, and I think I might have said too much now. But my late father always said, if we're ever going to talk anywhere, have a speech written out, but whatever you do, don't use it, because we'll do way better off our own head. So look, thanks very much. I really wish you every good luck. I wish you every good health. I love seeing smart people coming together for a forum or a conference or a gathering like this, because it means a lot. It's a good thing to knock heads together. And I want to be positive about this. Ireland is a great place. I know that Kerry is the best place in the world. We are the tourism capital of the world, and we have so much to offer, but we want everybody to come to Kerry. We want everybody to spend their money in Kerry, because we couldn't be spending it in a better place. And I know that I'll use my time in government to promote Kerry and to promote Ireland, but I'll do it in a positive way, and I'll do it in a work person-like way. And I won't let the begrudgers or the horrible people or the people that have flip all else to do, I won't let them bring me down, and I don't want them to bring you down either. Don't ever give them a second thought. All the very best, and thank you very much.